Start the session now. Developers and designers by the designer Julia Elman, the developer Mark Lavin. Please make them feel welcomed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for coming to our talk. First off, we thought we'd do a quick poll. How many of you are designers? Raise your hands really high. I have a bright light. How many of you are developers? Wow, lots of developers. Maybe designers. Great. Well, thanks so much for coming to our talk. Developers and designers collaborating on your Python project. My name is Julia. I'm a designer. I'm a front-end developer. And I'm an idea and whiteboard addict.
My name is Mark. I'm a developer, I'm a home brewer, and I run a very small website called brewbias.com. I'm a Python and open source junkie. We live in beautiful North Carolina, and we work for Cactus Consulting Group. You may have seen us around. If you haven't come and stopped by our booth, you should come and see our Raspberry Pi SMS poll application. I think the poll today is your favorite operating system, so you can go and tell everyone how much better Linux is than this Mac that we're using.
So, you've got an idea. It's an amazing idea. Maybe it's something that you thought of as you were falling asleep one night and you woke up all of a sudden and you jotted it in your notebook on your bedside table. Or it's something that you've been working on for a while. It's a labor of love and you've been working on it. But regardless of that, you are in love with this idea because it's so awesome. So what's the first thing you do when you get this wonderful idea? You start sharing the idea. You share it with your family, your friends, your familiar colleagues that you've previously worked with or currently work with. And you start getting some jazzy about it and talking about it. So you're all worked up on this idea and you're thinking, you know, I could use some help. I could use some help with this idea. So you start recruiting. So who do you recruit? Most of the time you'll be recruiting those familiar faces, colleagues, people that you've been talking to about this idea. And this is great, this is good. It's good to work with people that you're familiar with and have worked with before. But this will only get you so far.
Perhaps you should think about bringing in a designer. Not every one of us is lucky enough to work with a fantastic designer, so these might not be the first people that you reach out to. But many projects involve some kind of user interface, and that means you have users with eyes looking at your project. Maybe you might want to care about how it looks and how you interact with it. And bringing in a designer is more than just about making it look good. They bring in a different perspective. Designers have different training and different strengths than us developers. And while it could be tempting to use, say, pre-canned UI framework materials, that will only take your project sort of as far as the next developer. And I don't know about you, but I like to think that I can build a project that only I could have built. And adding that sort of personal touch to it it isn't going to work if I'm just using a stock UI framework. And this diversity of skill sets is really important. And adding these people from various backgrounds can help not just in the execution of the idea, but the idea itself. And you want to bring in people that complement your skill set. Just bringing in more and more developers is probably not going to help your project unless your project can be accomplished by just typing faster, which is usually not the case. And it's not just about the code, It's about the idea. But at the same time, you don't want to bring in too many people. Too many cooks in the kitchen can start a fire, and too many people competing about ideas and how to improve this project can lead to conflicts over egos for ideas that don't make the cut. So keep your team nice and compact. So compact and diverse. And we're going to assemble this super team of people, and we're going to get started. We're going to work on this project. And so how do these projects typically get started? There's a temptation, and something that I see maybe too often in projects, which is, I'm a developer, and I know what I need to work on. I know the code I need to write. And the designer knows something about the way the interface is going to be built, and the elements that need to be designed. Well, I'll just go work over here, and she'll just go work over there, and then we'll come back and we'll smash this work together. But this isn't collaboration at all. You shouldn't work in a silo as part of your collaboration. A part of a good collaboration is being pulled a little bit outside of your comfort zone and doing things that maybe are outside of your general expertise. And in doing that, you're giving feedback to this other part of the process that you normally would have been sort of excluded from. And this constant communication and idea exchange is where the best pieces of the project come through.
So let's talk a little bit about comfort zones, and I'll talk a little bit about what I know, which is designer comfort zones. And what a lot of designers, and I can speak from personal experience, when working with developers is sort of getting into the code part of it, right? Starting on command line, setting up a virtual environment, things of that nature, and being able to do those in a comfortable way. And as a designer, possibly having never done that before, being asked to do that, you're looking at your screen and you're like, oh my gosh, I am just going to blow up this machine. Plumes of smoke are just gonna poof out of it, and it's over. It's over. I have no business doing this. And I can say to designers out there with that sort of intimidation is to dive in. You're not gonna blow up your machine, I promise. Just start learning. Learning terminal, learning how to use things like Git, HG, SVN, whatever you're most comfortable with or whatever your team is using, and gain that new skill set. One of the best parts of collaboration is the knowledge exchange. Over time, you will get better at it. It takes practice. Most developers in here would also agree with that sentiment. And to those developers out there who are wondering, how do I get my designers, doing this? Help them. Be patient. Answer questions. And use the tools that are out there that make it also easier, because in the end, it's going to make your life easier too, to have your designers up to speed in doing these things. And also to the designers out there who do understand how to code, set up virtual environments and things of those nature, and have push to repos and whatnot, there's this sort of imposter syndrome that a lot of us have, because we're designers and we're not developers, so we don't really know what we're doing. And I just want to tell all you designers out there is, I believe in you. Don't be afraid that you don't know what you're talking about, because 9 times out of 10, you probably do. Give your honest feedback on the development work that's even going on. And find those folks who appreciate your talents and are willing to help refine your developer skills.
And we don't get out easy here either, developers. We live in a super cushy world where logic rules. I like my feeling of being in control of if statements and for loops, but we don't always get to do that. And when it comes to the design process and giving feedback, I think many developers fall into two categories. Either they don't have the confidence to say what is good design, or they're just not interested or engaged in this part of dealing with humans, dealing with users that don't make mistakes, or that do make a lot of mistakes, and users that don't see the glory of how amazing the back end of this website or this iOS application is, because all they see are the buttons. And they don't understand what happens when you hit this button, but you do. And you can't understand why they don't know. But developers, I believe in you too. If you have used an application or a website or anything that felt intuitive to you, that you came in and you knew right away how to do the things that you wanted to do, you've seen good design and you know what good design is. And when you see those types of things, you should pocket them as a reference. And you should build these instincts based on those references. And you can be a part of the design process, and you should be a part of the design process. And just like Julia says, you have to work designers have to work at being better developers. Developers need to work on being better designers and thinking not just about how to make this faster or scale better or those types of things, but how to make it more intuitive for the users. Now, if we're going to be outside of our comfort zone and we're going to intermingle our jobs instead of just working in our little developer land, designer land, now we come to a problem of workflows. And how do we make it so that we can work together in a reasonable way? And from my perspective, the one thing I love is automation. I like to bring my skills as a developer to bear to get rid of all of the shenanigans, all of the nonsense, and just focus on the creation of the idea. So many things involved with being a part of a large project or a small project are menial tasks that can be automated away. Setting up a development environment, those kinds of things can be scripted. Deployments, they can be scripted. Builds can be scripted. Testing can be scripted. You can be smart lazy and just let everyone, developers and designers, focus on just the creation of the idea and automate away your other problems.
So I actually wanted to talk about automation a little bit and how that's helpful to a designer. For example, I'm able to deploy to staging or production and with things like Fabric, and it's seamless. Like, I don't even really have to think too much about it. I have some commands, and
she doesn't have to interrupt my workflow.
Exactly.
I don't need to be there to help her deploy.
Right, and I'm able to do it without bugging anybody. So, and the reason why I know that is because of documenting. Document everything you can't automate. Tailor those setup docs to different types of contributors of varying backgrounds. The steps should be easy to follow and clearly defined. If you want to get more people to be involved in your idea, your awesome idea, you should document. Make it easy for them to contribute. So, the bottom line here is that in good collaboration, you are stretched beyond your original skill set. And you learn something, because that's the fun part.
Also, in a good collaboration, failure now becomes an option. because the act of the collaboration becomes bigger than the original idea. And whether or not the idea itself is successful, whether this project becomes a billion-dollar idea or a popular open source project, doesn't matter. You've learned something and you've become a better developer or you become a better designer through this process. And so it's okay to fail in a good collaboration. So we wanted to tell you a little story about a collaboration that Julia and I had. And it started with a simple idea, and an idea that many of you might have already had. And we work in Django web development, and I wanted a way to manage small bits of text on a Django website. You might say, well, Mark, that's been solved like 100 times. There's Django chunks, there's Django flat blocks, there's Django better chunks, there's Django pagelets. But something was nagging me about each one of these solutions that it just wasn't easy enough for me. I wanted to be able to see things right on the front end, click on them, edit them, save them, and I wanted to be able to use the power of the Django templating language within those blocks, and I wanted the developer to be able to put sane defaults when there was no database content, so that you could still see sort of what the page would look like, even if there wasn't content. So I talked to Julie about this idea. I said, oh, yeah, it'll be great, and you'll be able to see the text that you can edit somehow, and then you click on it, and then some editor, to be determined, will be there, and then you use it, you write it like a Django template, and then you click a button and you can see it render, and then you click back in a little tab and go back to the editor. And I was so excited about this idea.
And I thought, this is good, because, you know, we need better solutions to these things for the work that we're doing. But there was something that was missing that would make it really cool, right? Something really cool, and something that would make an even better idea. And I had recently watched this talk that some of you may have seen, and if you haven't, the URL's right there. Please go watch it as soon as possible. It's by Bret Victor. It's called Inventing on Principle. And in this talk, he talks about a lot of what we do as developers, which is we code, we compile, we view. Code, compile, view. And in his talk, he pointed out sort of taking out that compilation bit and being able to code and view at the same time. And how when you're able to do that, the ideas and the creation that comes out of that, just like a painter. Painters brush to canvas and you can see what it's doing immediately, right? So we should be able to do that as developers. And so having recently watched this talk, I was all, you know, oh, this talk's amazing. And I said, Mark, what if there was no tabbing? What if they just edited it and they could see what it would look like as they were editing it? That would be awesome.
When Julie was explaining this, I hadn't watched the video yet, and I had no idea who Bret Victor was. But the wheels were just spinning in my head, thinking, how in the world am I going to make it so that it compiles the Django templates fast enough that they can see it in real time? And what would that editor look like? And all of these things, I had no idea. I'd never seen something that worked quite like that, at least in the Django world. And I thought, there are too many technical challenges. I had already sort of put my mind down this path of what I knew I could do. And Julie was saying, no, you should do something that you don't know is possible. So I was skeptical. But I watched the video, and it's, as Julia says, it's quite inspiring, and it's inspired a lot of other projects, not just ours. And I instantly came to the realization that I was wrong and Julia was right. So we started sketching, and we had more conversations. And Julia helped me work out some of these problems, like what the editor would look like and how the user can even know that they can edit things. And we started doing some basic prototypes and really got the work going. And then we talked to more colleagues. This is Caleb and Julia and Karen and myself. And we had like a sprint day, a ship it day at Cactus, and I talked to them about this project, and they said, this is very interesting, and I wish it did this. And they just kept adding to the ideas that we had, and we had these things in place to do, to document how you get set up and things like that, and they were able to jump in right away, and within a day have the features that they felt were missing. So the end result of this work was a project called Django Scribbler. It's up on the Cactus GitHub account, and it has a super fancy logo that Julia helped put together.
Well, and I wanted to point this out. This logo is actually collaboration in itself, because we're all like sitting around like, what is this? We should do some branding. Yeah, let's do some branding, and what should the logo be? And Karen, who is in this picture back here, was like, well, why not an Etch-a-Sketch? It's like, genius. And that's how it came about.
So we are going to brave a demo for you of this application and try to show you the result of our collaboration.
You're good.
So this is the same demo that there's a live demo. This is not live. We're dumb enough to do a demo. We're not dumb enough to do it over the Wi-Fi. So I'm just going to log in. And here it shows the basic demo, and it tells you how you can find things. When you hover over them, you can see what things can be changed. And you can also use this little tab here, and you can see all the things that can be changed. And when I click on one, it pulls up this editor. And this was Julia's idea to get rid of the tabs. She said, no tabs. I hate tabs. We're not doing tabs. I'm not working on this project if we're doing tabs. So this was her idea to make it come up. And we found a slick editor. It uses CodeMirror, which is similar, like if you've ever used JS Fiddle, they use the same editor. And you can see here we can use all the things from the Django templating language. Here we have a user that's coming from the context, and we have a template tag. And as we type new things, they show up right away. You see it saves a draft in the background just using local storage. You can also see if when you make mistakes, it'll tell you this isn't valid Django syntax. Still not, because I haven't ended the if, and it'll go away. And this all came through just our initial talks of what we wanted this to do.
The other part, I have to hold this mic and try to do this, so it'll be a little slow. So the other thing is, we collaborated with our other teammates here, and one of the things Caleb added in. So if I go here and say user, okay, yeah, I've got user in there. I want to be able to capitalize the first letter. You can just hit, I need to put a space here.
You have to do the pipe.
Pipe, and then, nope. All right. Arg. See, live demos. Here.
Yeah, I don't know why this isn't showing it. No, it's not here.
Yeah, it's going to think that error.
Well, some of it works. Caleb broke it again.
No, we didn't. Well, the other thing will show something that Karen worked on, which is, let's go ahead and save. We're done. You can see here this sort of area here. Tell us what's been happening today. So if you go, let's go ahead. Can you? This is difficult. Okay. So. Okay, so you have the days log application, right? So you can actually wrap Scribbler around different parts, different applications in order to make them scribblable. I just made that word up. That's awesome. So, so we have the days log here, and we have all the different days that it's been running. And you can see here this information here. So let's say I want to add something, but let's say you don't want someone going into the admin, permissions issues, whatever. So you want to just have them added here. So again.
So what's something that someone did today?
Yep. Here. Somebody tell me what you did today, something you did today.
Drink coffee.
Drink coffee.
Drink coffee at PyCon.
Might have to add that a couple times.
Okay, drink. We'll just do one. Drink coffee. PyCon. Save. Okay. So we saved it here. Awesome. Then we go back to the admin. Boom, it's there too. Awesome. So that just totally gets rid of anybody having to actually edit small bits of text and have to go into the admin to do it, which can be a really harebrained thing to do when you're trying to go through a bunch of different applications at times. So this is seamless, and that came out of conversations with our colleague Karen, who's awesome.
I'm gonna pull the slides.
Oh, yeah, I do. Here.
So just to wrap up what we're talking about, it's good to bring in people with a different perspective than your own when you're collaborating on a project. And you need to bring them in early, and you need to talk often. You know, if I didn't bring in Julia early into the project, I would have sort of paved my way down this road of something that I would have either had to unwound my work, or I would have just been more hesitant to accept this idea that Julia had, which was much better than my idea. So another piece to sort of get your mind around about collaboration is that collaboration is not about just writing code. It's about the creation and execution of an idea. And people can contribute to the idea without contributing code. If you scan through the Git log of our project, you don't see that Julia just shaped the entire direction of the project, but she did. And she doesn't do that through Git commits. We did that through talking and sharing and exchanging ideas.
Because collaboration is really about the free flow of ideas and openness to feedback. It's about mutual respect, because that's part of the true creative process and what creates success. Thank you.
Thanks.
It looks like we have a lot of time for questions. So if anybody has questions, please line up there. And I'm going to take a moment for an announcement. There's a Buy Ladies auction that's going on 6:30 p.m. in rooms 209 and 210. If you have your guidebook, you can check it out and learn more about it. And go check it out there. They have a lot of awesome stuff, and bring money with you. Other than that, line up, ask our awesome speakers here the questions you have, and that's it.
Hi.
Hi.
Awesome talk. So as somebody who is a hybrid, I frequently encounter what you talk about as this like a lack of way to show evidence of designer involvement in projects, because it's easy to sort of look at code and look at diffs and decompile like code decisions, but it's hard to tease out design decisions from looking at like, oh, this is what happened, like what was the impetus for this. With code I can look at it and be like, oh, it's because this part needed refactoring, but it's harder to tease that out for design. Something that I've been thinking about a lot, but I don't have a good answer for, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this, is what ways do we have for integrating designer feedback in a way that would be evidenced, but without having to change the tool set that developers use? Like, I'm using Git and probably GitHub. How can I get, like, do you think like there's a good way to integrate designer feedback into the development process on Git and GitHub in a fashion that would work for open source, for not open source, for like, internal corporate projects? Like, is this something that you've thought about? And if yes, any thoughts would you care to share?
Well, I mean, when collaborating with each other, we work with each other. So in that retrospect, we talk to each other. So, and that I think is the most powerful form, is when you're actually talking with someone, because the internet has no tone, right? There's no inflection, there's no tone. And so you can say something and it's taken completely the wrong way and the direction's completely wrong. So that's difficult. But I mean, with Git and GitHub, you could leave comments on various issues about ideas. I've seen extensive comments or extensive notes on pull requests even. And a designer could totally do that with sketches now that we have image upload with GitHub, right? So obviously you don't want to go crazy with your image upload, but for the most part, you could do something like that. Submit a pull request and state what you're wanting from that project, or what you would like to contribute even as a proposal idea or whatnot. But yeah, that's how I would see that working on GitHub specifically. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I have a question for Julia and a question for Mark. For Julia, Julianne Horvath at GitHub back at the last HTML5 DevConf had this really great talk about designing in the browser. Is that a practice that you follow, and do you feel it's helpful for this kind of collaboration?
Yes. I am a firm believer in not just designing in the browser, but designing with code. Getting out of Photoshop now and designing with code. You can sketch really quick and fast, and you get ideas there, and it's instantaneous as opposed to going in Photoshop and layers, and I know there's stuff that helps with it, but it's much easier when you're prototyping and just getting into the code. So, and it's personal preference, obviously, what I'm stating here, but I think the end result is so much better when you start coding right out the door.
Awesome. And for Mark, could you give like a really brief overview of how you accomplished what you just showed with Scribbler? Of like, are you compiling templates? Are you rendering templates in JavaScript, or how is that actually working?
We're not rendering templates in JavaScript yet. So the basic piece of what it does is you define a block tag that wraps around some content. So if no content is found for that, you match a URL and a slug for the block. And if no content is found in the database, it renders whatever was inside the block. And when you pull up the editor, you begin to edit what was in the block. And the person who's editing has no idea whether they're editing something that came out of the database or something that was there from the template as a start, but it gives them a starting point. On the client side, I mean, it's pretty simple. I say it's simple, but it uses it uses backbone views to manage the state. It uses, like I said, the code mirror editor to do the editing, and it posts to the server to do the actual rendering, and we use the debugging information that you can get, like when you get the Django stack trace, you can get things like the line number and what the error was, and we get those back, and that's how we can highlight the individual lines and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question for Mark.
Sure.
A little bit early on in your talk, you mentioned that you don't particularly like UI frameworks. And I understand your point that you don't want to make your product look exactly like a lot of other things that are coming out. But in our experience, a UI framework helps give you a sane set of semantics of what's used in the markup. And it's quite a good translation point between yourself as perhaps a front-end developer and the designer who's strapping things onto there. So really, I'm asking for a clarification. Is it more that you're not too keen on UI frameworks that are heavily opinionated, like the Bootstrap version 2 and things, and are more in favor of a non-opinionated framework, or you wouldn't use a UI framework at all?
Okay, I would say that I am against very opinionated UI frameworks. But to clarify, my point is more that you shouldn't think as a developer that I don't need design help or feedback because I can just use Bootstrap. Like, even if you want to use Bootstrap, Bootstrap is a great starting point and it can be customized. 3.0 is definitely better than 2 for that. But I'm saying that these UI frameworks don't replace the human. Like the feedback that you get, the idea exchange is what I would say. Don't be tempted to say I don't need design feedback because I can just use a UI framework.
I would actually like to make a comment on that, which is more that when you use something like Bootstrap, it limits you. It's going to limit you. Yeah, you just know, yes. It limits you into a set of preset and predetermined rules that you have to follow in order to get everything to flow and work nicely. So, you know, when you use it, but think about the limitations and if that's going to work for your project. And if it is, you should totally go for it. But, you know, try not to box yourself in, I think is our point.
It's sort of the same thing with, you know, I thought, oh, you know, I'll do it this way because I know I can make it work with tabs, and Julia was like, you know, had a totally different idea of how to make it work, I guess. Like, you know, Bootstrap, again, kind of points you to this is how your HTML should look, and so this is how you kind of get tempted to use components that already exist because they exist rather than thinking of new interfaces, which is, I think, what Julia was saying.
Yeah, I guess just to comment on that, I see exactly what you mean with not choosing things which sort of predetermine the product before you're going forwards. A couple of projects we've started recently are very much design-led, so the developer doesn't even try and make a choice, and you essentially designate the designer as the dictator of the project. And they'll give you some wacky things to try and make. So as I saw in your particular point, you probably use tabs so you could maintain state between the two. But in the version that Julia has asked you to make, you'll probably make, as you have, an MVC JavaScript framework in order to make that work. So yeah, just your comment on whether you think having basically the designer make the choices and then build the thing to the designer's idea, or you reckon that's a dangerous idea?
Well, I mean, I didn't start with an MVC framework. I wrote it all as inline, like this really nasty, ugly jQuery. We'll call it a plugin. Yeah. It was the most disgusting. I refactored the whole thing because I was embarrassed that people were going to look at the code after we did this talk. So I rewrote it as an MVC framework. The original one was not. No, I don't think anyone should dictate anything. I think the whole point of our talk is about, you know, at least people getting that feedback to say, well, yeah, this is going to be difficult, or I have another idea that builds off of your idea. And again, it's about mutual respect and feedback. I think that's the main point. I think when someone is dictating to you, whether they mean to or not, like, you feel less than them. When they're just like, this is how it should look. And you're like, well, I have some ideas.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hey, in your experience, no, let me rephrase that. What's your experience with who should write the HTML, CSS, the templates, and all that, the designer or the developer?
I feel the designer.
Right.
I think it makes you a better designer when you know how to write code.
Right.
And it is a completely intimidating thing when starting out, and definitely the imposter syndrome. I don't know, I'm not a developer. And I think that just needs to go, because designers should all be learning and understanding how to code, both the front end and I think the back end, and getting comfortable with it because of that language exchange I can have with my developers, because I know those things, because I do those things. And it makes for a better end product, definitely, absolutely. Right. And I feel like designers enjoy doing that more, and developers enjoy doing the back end more. Like, I don't know that most developers like going into the templates and being like, oh, yay, this is so much fun. Like, I think most developers would much rather be working on back-end code and working in views and modeling data and all of those things, and be worrying about those and focusing on those things. But, you know, I definitely always ask, he'll tell you, I always ask Mark, I'm like, does this look right? Does this look right? That looks fine. So,
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I have a quick question, which maybe you guys doesn't really apply. And first off, by the way, that is the greatest Twitter handle I've ever seen.
I'm assuming you're talking about mine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That is marvelous. Do you guys have any tricks, and again, maybe it's not applicable, if you are doing this remotely, especially if you've got like massive time zone differences, you know, here, Europe, blah, blah, blah?
I gotta say, I don't have a lot of experience in largely distributed teams, but communication doesn't have to be face-to-face. I mean, there's a lot of tools for just doing collaboration. You know, we do a lot of work. We do a lot of our work on GitHub, and we do pull requests so everything gets reviewed, and whatever system that is. Of having all changes before they sort of hit that stable branch being reviewed, whether it's through GitHub or some other tool, I think is really helpful, and that can be a place for those that back and forth, that commentary, and everyone can sort of know what's going on. We out of time?
I had a quick comment on that too. I think it's imperative for remote teams to once in a while get together. Absolutely. Like, you can work remotely forever, but meeting someone in person, I mean, PyCon here, meeting all of these people that I've talked to online, some I've never met in person, and actually meeting and talking with them in person is so much different. Because of that thing that I talked about earlier, which is the internet has no tone, and so it's very important that I know the tone, because I know the person, I know that person's personality, and that's very important. So yes, remote work does work, but absolutely they should meet in person. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this session. Please applaud for the speakers.